Over the past few months, we've seen Muslim members of parliament arguing against a ban on cousin marriage. We've seen Tahir Ali again arguing for a clampdown on supposed blasphemy against Islam. And now we have groups of MPs calling for an airport 5,000 miles away. I'm sorry, but none of these things are in the interest of British voters.
Hello and welcome to Spectator TV. I'm John Connolly, the Spectator's news editor. This week brought an interesting story that several MPs, mainly Labour ones, were lobbying for a new airport to be built, but you'll never guess where. Joining me to discuss is Brendan O'Neill, Spike's chief politics writer. Brendan, thank you for joining us on Spectator TV. You wrote a brilliant piece for Coffee House this week about a particularly mad story, which was that several MPs, mainly Labour MPs, have written to the Prime Minister of Pakistan asking for an airport to be built, not in Britain, but in Mirpur, Pakistan. What's going on here? Why are these MPs calling for this? Tell us a bit what's going on.
It's crazy. It's a really one of those mad stories that makes you wonder if April Fools came early this year. It's, 20 MPs in total, mostly Labour MPs, as you say, have written this letter to the Prime Minister of Pakistan saying he must support the building of an airport in Mirpur in Pakistan-ruled Kashmir. And the justification they give is that some of their constituents would find it easier if there was an airport near Mirpur, because currently the closest one is 80 miles away by road, which takes 3 hours, which, by the way, doesn't sound that long to me. That's a pretty normalish length journey from an airport to where you live. And so they say it must have this airport. But what's really striking about this, there's two things. Firstly, why are they focusing on what Pakistan needs rather than what their own British constituents need here in Britain? But also, a lot of these MPs are the kind of MPs who oppose airport construction in Britain, who oppose the third runway at Heathrow because it would be so polluting and disastrous for the planet. And yet they support the building of airports 5,000 miles away. It's really quite staggering.
It's amazing. I think that's what stood out the most is when you've got MPs like Zarah Sultana sort of saying, a third runway at Heathrow would be an environmental catastrophe, but here they're lobbying for a new airport completely somewhere else. I mean, it does call into question how important all these sort of environmental things actually are, doesn't it?
Absolutely. A few months ago, Zarah Sultana, who is an independent MP at the moment, having had the Labour whip withdrawn, she said that Keir Starmer's support for a third runway at Heathrow was reckless and ridiculous and stupid, and it would be a death sentence for the planet, essentially. That's what she said. And now she's putting her name to a demand for a huge new international airport in Kashmir. Really extraordinary and really eye-opening, in fact, because, what you have here are politicians, a political class that wants to impose net zero immiseration on people in the UK. No new airports, no more digging for coal if they had their way, no more fracking for gas, no nuclear power. They want to bring a halt to everything that might in some way intrude on the environment. And yet when it comes to Mirpur, thousands of miles away, a place that the vast majority of Britons have no connection with whatsoever, they're all in favor of these things. They're all in favor of construction and building roads, which this would no doubt entail as well. All that stuff that they say would be a death sentence for the planet if we did it, apparently is fine if Pakistanis do it. Real hypocrisy there. It really exposes the hypocritical nature of their net zero religion, which is fundamentally about, I think, immiserating Brits and not actually about doing anything about the climate.
I think it's particularly galling as well when infrastructure isn't in a particularly great place in this country either. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, no question. There is a lot here that we should be building and fixing and sorting out. And yet we have members of parliament who are focusing on a different country. Tahir Ali, the Labour MP for a Birmingham constituency, he's a signatory to this letter. Birmingham is a city at the moment that has got a very serious bin strike. Apparently, there are rats as big as cats roaming around the city. The city is covered in rubbish. And yet he's focusing on an airport that they need thousands of miles away. I think there are a lot of people who would rather that MPs like him cleaned up their own cities before they focus on the building up of other cities. I think it really fundamentally exposes a problem with identity politics and a little bit of a crisis of integration. Because when we have members of our own parliament who are very, very interested and seemingly more excited about developments in other countries than here at home, that does suggest that there is a bit of a problem here and that there isn't as fantastic a process of integration as we might like to believe when we have politicians who focus on faraway places rather than their own constituencies.
I suppose, Brendan, the MPs who signed this letter, they would make the argument that, our job is to represent our constituents. A large number of our constituents in these particular areas travel daily to Mirpur. Then why shouldn't we make their lives easier, even if it slightly strangely is a country abroad? I mean, what would you say to that kind of line of argument?
I just don't buy it. I grew up in a very Irish part of London, and everyone I knew used to go to Ireland all the time. And that would entail going to places that were very difficult to get to. My family comes from the extreme west coast of Ireland. It involved driving for 24 hours down small, windy roads. We would have loved an airport in Connemara, in Galway. That would have been fantastic. But the idea that we would have lobbied our members of parliament here in Britain to agitate for that makes no sense whatsoever. It was our tough luck that Ireland wasn't up to scratch. And if we wanted to lobby the Irish government, we should have done that. I feel the same about this. I think, yes, there are lots of Kashmiri origin people in Britain. There are lots of Indian people. There are lots of Jamaican people. There are lots of Irish people. There are lots of people with heritage in different parts of the world. But we can't fix all those countries' problems, and we certainly shouldn't be focusing on them. We do have to focus on what we need here. I'm worried about some of these members of parliament who seem to be driven more by an identitarian zeal rather than by a commitment to what Britain needs. So over the past few months, we've seen Muslim members of parliament arguing against a ban on cousin marriage. We've seen Tahir Ali again arguing for a clampdown on supposed blasphemy against Islam. And now we have groups of MPs calling for an airport 5,000 miles away. I'm sorry, but none of these things are in the interest of British voters. It's not in our interest that there should be an airport over there. It's not in our interest that there should be new laws against so-called blasphemy. It's not in our interest to allow cousin marriage or to celebrate cousin marriage. We do have to continually ask ourselves, what is in the best interest of the people who live in Britain, whatever their backgrounds? And I fear that too many MPs are not driven by that question.
It's a difficult one, though, isn't it? In that our country is changing. The demographics of certain constituencies are certainly changing. It is very difficult to stop this kind of sectarian politics. Do you think it is possible to do something about it, though?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. And I think actually the Justice Minister, Shabana Mahmood, is a good example of where integration really works. I think her showdown with the Sentencing Council has been quite inspiring, I think. She has asserted the primacy of Parliament against this arrogant quango that thought it could do whatever the hell it wanted in terms of bringing in new two-tier sentencing guidelines. She's also asserted the ideal of equality before the law and the idea that law should be blind. It should not judge people according to their race or their gender or their sexuality, but it should apply the law equally to everyone. This is a woman who describes herself as a devout Muslim, and yet she seems pretty devoted to the rule of Parliament and to the rule of universal principles of justice. That's brilliant. That's great. Whether her party, the Labour Party, can keep running with that commonsensical approach is a different question entirely. But it's clear that you can very easily be a person in this country who has origins elsewhere, but who is committed to the well-being of this country, committed to what this country needs. I think she demonstrates that, and there are many others who do as well. So we can tackle this sectarianism, but we have to be honest about the fact that it exists. And I just think, even though this letter about the Mirpur airport was weird and silly and a bit of a silly season story, it also did point to something more serious in our country when there are politicians who get more excited about what's happening overseas than they do about what's happening at home.
We should say that Number 10 has refused to comment on whether or not there should be an airport in Mirpur. Do you think, though, that they should actually have a stronger stance and kind of say to their MPs, you need to stop advocating essentially for foreign countries?
Yes, absolutely. I think Keir Starmer should say that they should stop doing that. It's not in the interest of all of their constituents for this to be their obsession or to something that they focus on. I also think he should tell them to calm down, because this could offend India, and India is one of our great allies. It's a very important ally. We have lots of historical connections with India, lots of people connections, lots of trade connections. India could very easily be ticked off by the sight of these British members of parliament calling for a development in Pakistani-ruled Kashmir. Kashmir is a very disputed territory. There's a lot of tension there. It's not quite clear who rules or who should rule. So they're also opening a real can of worms by interfering in that part of the world in particular. I think Keir Starmer is well within his rights to tell his members of parliament in particular, stop this. This is not our business. Let's leave it to Pakistan. Let's leave it to the rulers of Kashmir. And you focus on cleaning up Birmingham City rather than doing something in Mirpur.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Brendan.
Thanks, John.